The cameras were never meant to spy on love. They were installed for control, for certainty, for fear. Ethan Carter, a self-made millionaire, stared at the security monitors in his private office every night before sleeping. 8 screens, 8 angles, every corner of his mansion covered, especially that room, the twins' room. Born healthy, laughing, perfect until the accident. A drunk driver. A red light. A single night that stole movement from both of his sons. Since then, Lucas and Liam hadn't taken a step. Money gave Ethan the best doctors, the best therapists, the best machines, but it couldn't give him peace. So he installed cameras, not because he didn't trust the staff, but because he didn't trust anyone. Not anymore. That's when Ruth entered the house. Quiet, black, middle-aged, soft-spoken. A maid recommended by an agency Ethan barely glanced at. She'll handle basic care, the manager said. Feeding, cleaning, nothing more. That was all Ethan wanted. Nothing more. On her first day, Ruth barely spoke. She kept her head down, followed instructions, and never looked at Ethan directly. He noticed that. People usually tried to impress him. She didn't. That night, as usual, Ethan sat in front of the monitors. The twins lay in their wheelchairs, positioned near the window. The room was silent. Ruth entered the frame. She adjusted a blanket, checked a glass of water, straightened a pillow. Normal. Ethan almost switched the screen. Then, she stopped. She didn't leave. She sat down, slowly, right between the two boys. Ethan leaned forward. Ruth took Lucas's hand first. Then Liam's, gently, like they were made of glass. She didn't look at the cameras. She didn't know she was being watched. Her lips moved. No sound reached the monitor. Ethan frowned. What was she saying? She bowed her head slightly, holding both boys' hands, and stayed like that. Still, calm, present. 5 minutes passed. 10. The boys, who usually stared blankly at the wall, leaned their heads toward her shoulders. Their breathing slowed. Their tense fingers relaxed inside her palms. Ethan felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. This wasn't in her job description. The next day he checked again. Same routine, different moment. Ruth fed them carefully, wiping their mouths like a mother would. When Lucas dropped his spoon, she didn't sigh. She smiled. She spoke again. Soft, slow. Ethan turned up the volume. Still nothing. But the twins reacted. Liam's eyes followed her. Lucas let out a small sound, something between a breath and a laugh. Ethan's fingers froze over the keyboard. Doctors had told him not to expect reactions. Yet there it was. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. On the third night, he watched longer. Ruth brought a small object from her pocket. A folded piece of paper. She opened it and showed it to the twins. Ethan zoomed in. It was a drawing. Crude, simple, childlike. 2 stick figures, standing. Ruth pointed at it, then gently touched each boy's chest. She spoke one sentence. Clear this time. You are still whole. Ethan's breath caught. Why was she doing this? Why hadn't anyone told him this was happening? And most of all, why did it feel like she was giving his son something he never could? Ethan reached for the phone, then stopped. Because on the screen, for the first time in 2 years, Lucas smiled, and Ethan realized the cameras had just captured something far more dangerous than negligence. They had captured truth. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of guilt. For 2 years, he had measured love in numbers, therapy hours, equipment upgrades, medical charts, and yet, on a silent camera feed, a woman he barely noticed had given his son something no machine ever had. Presence. The next morning, Ethan arrived home early, something he hadn't done since the accident. He didn't announce himself. Instead, he went straight to the security room. The screens flickered to life. Ruth was already there. She had moved the twins closer to the window. Morning light poured over their faces. She brushed Liam's hair back gently, then knelt in front of Lucas. Ethan turned the sound on. Today, Ruth said softly, we try again. Again? She placed a small ball on the floor, bright red. Ethan's chest tightened. Doctors had warned him. Don't create hope. Ruth rolled the ball slowly toward Lucas's foot. Nothing happened. She didn't rush. She didn't apologize. She just waited. The ball stopped. Ruth smiled anyway. That's okay, she whispered. We don't quit. She turned to Liam next, repeating the same calm ritual. Then she did something Ethan had never seen. She took off her shoes. She sat on the floor, eye level with them. If you can't move, she said, voice steady, then we move the world for you. Ethan's hands trembled. She held both their hands again. And this time, Ethan heard it clearly. A prayer. Not loud, not dramatic, just words wrapped in hope. Minutes passed. Then, barely noticeable, Lucas's toes twitched. Once. Then still. Ethan gasped. He rewound the footage. Watched again. No mistake. The door to the twins' room opened suddenly. Ethan stepped inside. Ruth turned, startled. She stood quickly. "Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't realize—" "Don't stop," Ethan said. His voice broke. Ruth froze. "I've been watching," he continued. "Every night." Her face fell. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," she said quietly. "I swear." "I know," Ethan replied. He knelt in front of his sons. For the first time in years. "Why?" he asked Ruth. "Why do you do all this?" Ruth looked at the boys, then at Ethan. "Because," she said softly, "someone once watched me the same way." She told him then, about her own son, paralyzed, forgotten, loved, but never truly seen. "He passed," she said simply, "but these boys didn't." Silence filled the room. Ethan stood. He walked to the wall and unplugged the cameras. The monitors went black. "I installed them to protect my sons," he said, "but all they showed me was my absence." He turned to Ruth. "You're not a maid anymore." She looked confused. "Your family." Weeks later, the doctors were stunned. Small responses, minor progress, hope. But the biggest change didn't show up on scans. It showed up in laughter, in patience, in presence. The last camera footage was never saved, because some moments were never meant to be watched, only lived.